Of course, presentations are more than just logical structures. They also need colour. If there's too much structure, they might be very clear, but they might be very boring, and they will fail to engage the audience. But of course, if there's too much entertainment, lots of energy, but no real clarity, then the audience might fail to understand the purpose that you're trying to get to. Either way, both of these have failed to achieve the purpose that you are after. You need to find the right balance. It's all about the purpose of your presentation. Who are you presenting to? What do you need to get them to do to take the action that you're hoping for? How do you communicate that most clearly? Maybe you need to use props. Maybe you need some objects that you can hold up that illustrate your point. Maybe you could do a role play. Maybe you could challenge them with puzzles or with a problem and they have to try and find the right solution. Maybe you can try and find links to old concepts that they are well familiar with, and how do you link those with the new ideas to show the progression. Maybe you could tell stories, something that can inform, persuade, maybe even entertain along the way. Note that, of course, storytelling can be very different in different cultures. Culture is transmitted through our stories, and therefore not only the content of the story is important, but also the structure of how it is told. That's going to have to vary depending on the audience that you're talking to if you want to really communicate well to them. For example, many American stories tend to focus on cause and effect of different moral values, for example. But other cultures, they might enjoy having lengthy word plays, and they develop different characters and their relationships without ever seeming to come to a conclusion, which may actually just be a very Western thing. Many films begin with an opening scene that unfolds, and somehow at the end of the film you kind of return to that scene, but in an improved way. And our minds quite like that pattern. Here is how it is, these things need to happen, and then here is how it could be. Maybe we could use something like group work to help add some different flavour, some different colour to our presentation. Of course, group work uses a lot of time, so you're only going to do these kind of things if it really does help focus on the purpose of your presentation. What is it you're hoping to do? If you're hoping to educate them, then maybe group work will be a very appropriate way of educating them. Maybe you want to use flip charts or a whiteboard or something like that. These are very good for capturing ideas or unfinished thoughts. You know, as you're interacting with your audience, you can put their thoughts down as well, and you can show them how your thoughts are progressing. Do remember to try and write neatly enough that they can actually read what you're putting down. Maybe you need to summarize things just into bullet points, but be careful that you don't use too much jargon, which you understand but not everybody in your audience does. It's quite difficult to not, when you're working with a flip chart, you tend to sort of turn around and do things on the flip chart or on the whiteboard, and it then means that you're turning your back on the audience. You want to try to avoid turning your back on the audience even for a second. So if needed, get yourself a scribe, get somebody else to do the writing so that you can carry on staying fully engaged with the audience. As you are considering how you're going to add illustrations and fun into your presentations, remember, not everybody has the same assumptions that you do. For example, as somebody from Britain, I might use the owl as a symbol of wisdom. But of course in Nepal, the owl is a symbol of stupidity. So be careful with your symbols, your metaphors, even how you draw things is going to be different in different cultures. And even things like how we, the stuff that we verbalize in our presentations. I might think that a cat says meow, but in Japan it says nyang, and a dog says gav. in Russia and Wong in Cantonese, and so on. You know, many of the things which we assume in a certain way might mean something completely different in a different culture or in a different worldview. Even simple things like colours can have quite different meanings. Around the world, you know, I'll just give you a moment to look at this. You know, some people in the West might think that blue is the colour of depression and sadness, and it's a bit cold and unfeeling. But over in the Far East, blue is a picture of healing and health. In Nepal, Rato Ramro, red is good, it's beautiful, but in the Middle East, red is the colour of danger. So, you know, there's all sorts of things which we may assume coming from our worldview, coming from our background, but they can mean very different things in other places. So as usual, the answer is know your audience, know who you're talking to. Another way of adding colour to your presentations is by using handouts. But if you do use handouts, think about what are you hoping to achieve with them? How do you want them to work? What is the best way of using them in your particular presentation? Some people will say that that those who take their own notes, they stay alert for longer. You know, if you're trying to teach something, maybe you want to get them to take their own notes, but sometimes the notes that they take might not be accurate, and in which case giving them a handout actually helps them to have accurate notes when they walk away. Maybe though, if you give them a handout, maybe they will focus on that bit of paper rather than focusing on you. If you give handouts or notes, sometimes that may allow them to kind of read ahead, and in which case they might start disengaging from really listening to you and what you're trying to say, unless maybe you leave some gaps in your handout so that they can't read too far ahead. And do you give the handouts out at the beginning or at the end of your presentation? You want to think about these things so that you use handouts the most effective way. Handouts are a very personal thing. Everybody has their own way of doing it. You are never going to make everybody happy.